stirred up a hornet's nest.
I have come to the conclusion that the European Union is incapable of meaningful reform.
There were no tears in Downing Street.
Let's be honest, everybody knows that your position is changing week by week, and now you've got the cheek. Increasing numbers of people in the Labour Party at the conference this week are talking about a second referendum. So no second referendum. Crystal clear. Has everybody heard that? Crystal clear.
No second referendum.
Excellent.
Is it a clever plan? Does it really stick to the red lines that Theresa May set out?
I'm amazed Andrea's saying this. I mean, it clearly doesn't stick to the red lines. It isn't Brexit. It leaves supporters who are supporting Leave Means Leave are incandescent with rage.
We need to get on with it. The government needs to get a grip and accelerate the process.
Please welcome to the stage John Longworth and Richard Tice.
Brexiteers, I want you to make a big noise today, not least because we want those people down the road in the ICC to hear you here and hear that leave means leave. It's a real privilege to be here in the Midlands for our second of the Save Brexit Tour of Britain. This is the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, and now it's prospering with services, design, engineering and manufacturing still. Despite what our previous Chancellor George Osborne said, despite Project Fear, despite the fact that he said there'd be 600,000 people unemployed and that we would have a recession, actually manufacturing is booming and exports have increased and our trade gap has narrowed since the referendum entirely because of Brexit, notwithstanding the fact Osborne never achieved any of this in his March of the Makers. He just predicted a plague of locusts, a plague of boils, and that it would rain for 100 years if we left the European Union. You know, I've been in business all of my life, and in all my twists and turns of my career, whether it was senior positions or otherwise, I've always been involved with Brussels. I was the person who had to walk around the corridors of power in Brussels, finding out what they were up to, understanding what game they were playing. And it's for that very reason that I chose to vote to leave the European Union, because I know what they were up to. But what an amazing turn of events that we are here today, 2.5 years after I started campaigning to leave the European Union in the referendum. 2.5 years later, we're here, having to reboot the campaign and raise the People's Army to send a very clear message to our leaders that they've got to fulfil the democratic vote of the British people. And we're here because large parts of the British establishment, the political establishment across the board, the Conservatives, Labour and the Liberal politicians do not believe in democracy. They believe that democracy only matters when it suits them. And then we have the multinationals of the CBI who are rerunning Project Fear, who are telling us they might have a few weeks of disruption, a bit of inconvenience, set against the entire future of Britain forevermore. all of them acting in concert with a malign and vicious European Union. Our forefathers would have called them traitors. Well, I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to be here with you today. And I'm proud to be the chairman of Leave Means Leave. And we're here today to send a very loud message to those people at the ICC in the Conservative Conference that leave really does mean leave. So we've got a great lineup of speakers for you today. So I'm not going to keep you away from them any longer, but before we introduce the speakers, I'd like to introduce Richard Tice, who is the founder of Leave Means Leave and our vice chairman. Richard, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you, John. It's lovely to see so many people here this afternoon, and we know why we're here, don't we? We're here to send a very clear message to the Prime Minister, to Number 10 and the Cabinet, how deeply disappointed we are with their progress on these negotiations. And we want to send a very clear message that they should just chuck Chequers. When I founded Leave Means Leave shortly after the referendum, I thought it was just going to last about 6 months. I was a bit naive. I thought we could just support the government and they would do what they were told to do. But here we are, over 2 years later, as John says, and we're back. The rallies are back, and I've got good news, and you may have seen it outside. The battle bus is back. I have to tell you, we had such fun deciding what to put on the side of the bus. How big a number were we going to put on it? I was all for putting save 39 billion. But unbelievably, I was actually voted down, but I believe in democracy. Anyway, we've got a great lineup of speakers. We know that actually we can still influence the course of action here, ladies and gentlemen, all of us. What we need to do, we need to write to our MPs, we need to appear at their constituency surgeries, and we need to tell them very clearly, chuck Chequers, we believe in Britain, and no deal, no problem. No deal. It's really important, this. It's an incredibly simple message. No deal, no problem. And we all know in business, no deal is always better than a bad deal. So the good news is our first speaker, he's been an MP since 2005. He is a passionate Brexiteer, always has been. And he actually turned down jobs in government so that he could vote according to his convictions. He's been an absolute stalwart to the campaign. During the referendum period, he worked tirelessly 24/7 for months on end. He does also hold the record for designing and wearing possibly the most hideous, garish, lime green tie the House of Commons has ever seen. But anyway, before we welcome him to the stage, let's just see a clip of action of our first speaker.
The leading Tory Brexiteer, Peter Bone.
Good evening, and the great news is we're now only 422 days away from withdrawing from this terrible European Union.
What would happen to all those Brits already living in Europe if we were sending people home? We're not. This is outrageous.
There's the tie.
We will not be sending people. You can't make project. No, Will, you've had your say.
What the British people have said is end free movement, stop paying billions of pounds to the EU, make our own laws in our own country, judged by our own judges.
Please welcome to the stage, Peter Bone, MP.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's great to be in Birmingham today, and I'm sorry to disappoint you. I could not find any Go ties left, so this is the best I could come up with. First, can I thank Richard Tice? He's been an extraordinarily strong Brexiteer and someone who's in business in the city. It's a tough gig to do. Thank you, Richard, for all you've done. And to John, and to John Longworth, who's hiding at the back. Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce. And he gave that up because he believed in something. And his passion and principle added a lot of weight to the referendum campaign. Now, I'm really here only as a warm-up act, and we've got some really great speakers to come. I mean, we've got Brendan Chilton, who is a very large part of Labour Leave, and he's an absolute star. And as a Conservative, I'm not supposed to welcome more Labour MPs, but if there was one, I'd like Brendan to be in the House of Commons. And we're going to see a rising star of the Conservative Party in Andrea Jenkyns. She is just the most courageous of the new members of Parliament. She gave up her job as PPS to Dominic Raab long before Chequers to stand up and fight for Brexit. Thank you, Andrea. You are an absolute star. And we've got Graham Stringer coming, and if anyone's heard Graham before, he is thoughtful, powerful, and anyone from the left will be convinced by his arguments why they should support leaving the European Union. It's probably the only thing Graham and I agree on, but he is... Imagine being in the Labour Party and standing up for Brexit. That takes a lot of courage. Well done, Graham. I think there's somebody else as well. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Brexit.
Nigel Farage, Mr. Brexit, as somebody says at the front. Nigel is unbelievable. I am personally convinced that if it wasn't for Nigel, we would not have won the referendum. And if the government had been sensible, and the government isn't often sensible, and it certainly wasn't then, I would have put Nigel in the House of Lords, and I would have given him the job of negotiating our exit from the European Union. And I tell you what, if he'd been in charge, we'd be out by now. I'm actually really only here to say that I want to stand up for Brexit, that we need to chuck Chequers, and that leave means leave.
Absolutely.
I founded Go, Grassroots Out, with Tom Persclave MP, because we believed that we needed to talk to people, not just the Westminster bubble. And we travelled up and down the country speaking at rallies like this, but also small town hall meetings with 20 or 30 people. And it didn't matter whether it was Monmouth or Newcastle or Glasgow or Belfast. Everybody had the same message for us. They just wanted to get out of the European Union superstate. Now, somewhere at the back lurking is Helen Harrison. She is the Chief Executive of Grassroots Out, and she was responsible for organising so much of what we did. And thank you for giving me an impossible schedule for 3 months back in 2016. Thank you, Helen. But when we talked at these meetings, just a number of reasons came clear as to why we should leave the European Union. One was to end the free movement of people. The second was not to send billions of pounds each and every year to the European Union, and to make our own laws in our own country judged by our own judges. Now, I have to say, I think that's the official line of the government, but I just fail to see how Brexit passed any of those tests. It just isn't going to happen if we have checkers. And I will talk to you a little bit later about what I want you to do when you leave this hall. But as we travelled up and down the country discussing why immigration, uncontrolled immigration from the European Union should be ended, people said this to us. They said, we're not against immigration, we want controlled immigration. But what we are against is people just walking into this country from the European Union with no connection with this country and no job to go to. And yet other people who are highly qualified, might be doctors or engineers from other parts of the world, can't get in. And what people want is a fair immigration system based on the facts of merit, not because you live in the European Union. The next thing that annoyed people enormously was giving net £10 billion each and every year to the European Union for nothing in exchange. Over the years, we have subsidised the European Union by hundreds of billions of pounds. And yet at the same time, the European Union has sold to us billions of pounds of more goods than we sell to them. That, by anyone's judgment, is a bad deal. That money should be spent here in this country, not given to the European Union. And people said to us, we didn't fight world wars to be subservient. We want to make our own laws in our own countries, and if you don't like the people who make those laws, you can get rid of them. We don't want to be ruled by unelected bureaucrats from Brussels. And the thing that annoyed people enormously was when we make laws, they're not judged by our own judges. They're not decided in our Supreme Court. They're decided somewhere in Europe by a bunch of judges, half of which are not qualified anyway. As an independent, sovereign country, we have to take the power back, not only to make the laws, but to have them judged here. And that's what a real Brexit does. So as Brexit was failing, because what has happened is the elite, the establishment, set about immediately after we won the referendum to reverse it. And actually, they've done pretty well at it. So we have now got to stop that. We've got to go back to grassroots campaigning. And a few months ago, Tom Purslove and I decided we needed to start that process. So we produced these cards with the real Brexit messages on them, and we're delivering over 100,000 across our two constituencies. We are getting thousands and thousands of these cards back. The idea that the British people have changed their mind and want to remain is completely untrue. So what I want you to do after this rally is go back to your constituencies, pester your Member of Parliament and tell them that you want a proper Brexit. And if we do that, if we can galvanise the British people again, my colleagues in Parliament will take note and we'll get a proper Brexit. But I have to tell you, time is limited. So let's go out there and stand up for Brexit and make sure our MPs realise that the leave must mean leave.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Peter. And for our second speaker, ladies and gentlemen, because we're a cross-party group, or indeed of no party, we've got someone, as Peter indicated, from the Labour Party. He's been an MP since 1997. Before that, he was leader of Manchester City Council for 12 years. He knows a thing or two about what is required in society to help the poorest, the least well off. And he knows that a proper Brexit will help the least well off and the poorest in society the most. And he is a man of deep conviction. He has, like all of the Labour Brexiteers in Parliament, he faces hideous abuse from the ultra-Ramonas. He's incredibly brave to take the position he does and to vote with the government. Let's just look at a few clips of him in action before we welcome him to the stage.
Good morning to you. Can you tell us which way you're going to vote today and why?
I will vote for the second reading of the bill. The bill is necessary for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. That was the commitment the Labour Party gave.
What you have is the political project being protected at the centre, at the expense not just of the Greeks actually, but the whole of youth across Portugal, Spain, Italy, Cyprus, Greece. I do not believe in the long term, because I'm a Democrat, you can sustain the European Union if you don't have the support of the people. And that finally is why the EU project will fail.
Please welcome to the stage Graham Stringer, MP.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Richard, for those kind words. I'm not sure I deserve the words brave. If you think the vote in July, Peter, that was won by 2 votes by 3 and 1 by 5, I don't believe anybody in this hall or anybody probably in the country would think it was controversial and Labour and Conservative and Lib Dem and Nationalist MPs should be voting against what we voted for. What we voted for was the right of this country to set our own VAT levels. The Americans fought a revolution for no representation without taxation. But that's effectively what was put to us just before July. The final vote, which we won by 5, was a wrecking amendment, basically, which would have kept us in the customs union and wrecked the negotiating position. I don't believe it is brave to vote for what was a manifesto commitment and what was in the absolute meaning of what was in the referendum in 2016. It is just straightforward decency to vote for what you say you're going to do in general elections and in the referendum. This is now no longer an argument about leaving and remain. The people have decided that. They decided that in a very clear, unambiguous vote in 2016. That's what's decided, and the government should get on. It's essentially now a vote between those people who believe in democracy and those people who don't. And from almost day one, people have denigrated those people who voted to leave. If you voted to leave, you didn't vote for leave because you objected to money being sent to the European Union. A great deal more, in actual fact, than was on the bus that so upsets Remainers when you take into account the VAT and customs we collect in this country. Those people who believe in democracy. But from day one, people were told that if you voted to leave, then you were angry. You were from the north of England or the Midlands or from Wales, and you didn't understand these fundamental principles of democracy. You were just an angry person. Therefore, your vote should be discounted. I don't believe that. When I went out on the day and before, like Peter, I went around the country talking in universities, talking to rallies, talking to people in my own constituency. People had an absolutely fundamentally clear idea of what they were voting for. This was said to me by somebody going to vote on the day. We're voting to control our own laws, aren't we? Well, yes. And it's as simple as that. As simple as that. But the denigration goes on, and it's there when people are asking for a second referendum. They don't call it a second referendum. They call it a people's vote. I wonder who they thought voted in the first referendum. This is absolutely fundamental about democracy. Peter and I, as Peter said, we don't agree on very many things. We agree on this. Same would be true of Nigel and Andrea. We come from different political histories, different political parties. But if we don't get out of the European Union, all our disagreements that can be decided in general elections will be a waste of time. Because most of those decisions will not be taken by you and other people within the United Kingdom. They will be taken in Brussels. So our disagreements will become irrelevant. I just want to share with you one of the... I think all the arguments have been on our side, all the scaremongering has been on the other side. So I just want to share with you the most bizarre argument I had with Peter Kellner on the radio a week last Sunday, I think it was. I thought I'd heard all the arguments or all the points that were made, but I'd never heard this one. He said, Peter Kellner is a famous pollster. He never declares his interest that he's married to somebody who gets a significant pension from the European Union. Doesn't say that. But he came out with a new argument. He said, Graham, have you ever thought we should really have a second referendum? Because some of the people who voted in 2016 are now dead. Well, as a fact, it's true. And as I said to him on the radio, I said, but on that basis, you'd have a general election the day after a general election. Because people have postal votes, often people are very poorly, and by the time they come to vote, by the time the vote's counted, some of them will inevitably have passed away. So would you have a general election the day after? To which he didn't have an answer to that. The people who want us to have a second referendum are completely in line and attuned to the thinking and arrogance of Brussels. The people of Greece voted in a referendum not to carry out the plans imposed on them by the European Commission. What happened? They were ignored. that people in Ireland voted twice to reject treaties put forward by the European Union. Each time they were asked to vote again. And people in France voted to reject the Lisbon Treaty. At the time it was called the European Constitution. They changed the name and said, oh, you don't have to vote again, we'll ignore the people of France that they didn't want the Lisbon Treaty. And the same in Denmark with the Maastricht Treaty. And what the people who want a second vote, what the European Commission would like, is for exactly the same thing to happen again. But I believe that the British people are more cussed than that and will not be told what to do, either by Remainers or by Brussels. I also think not only has there been contempt for those people who voted leave, I actually have respect for ordinary people who looked at the issues and voted remain. And many of those people respect the democratic process just as much as those of us who voted leave. They say, we've made a decision. The government should get on with it. And I think those people, probably half the people who voted Remain are in that category. They respect the democratic decision and expect the government to get on with it. I will finish on 2 points, because my time's nearly up. One is Chequers. What Mrs May, the Prime Minister, doesn't seem to understand is people voted to leave the European Union not because they wanted to keep the regulations of the European Union, but because they wanted laws and regulations that would fit our economy and what the people of the United Kingdom wanted. So why would anybody want to support Chequers, which keeps us aligned to those regulations? I don't think anybody wants that, do they? No. And finally, to my own party, Keir Starmer has set down six criteria that have to be passed. They're ridiculous. They're not in any sense achievable. How can we have the same benefits that we have now? Hopefully we'll have more benefits, but how would you measure them? It is an absurd criterion to have. And finally, we're going to have the same benefits for the regions is one of the criteria. One of the great lies of the Remainers during the campaign was that the regions would lose out European funding. Have they not looked and seen that every region apart from Cornwall and Northern Ireland makes a net contribution to the European Union? The money flow is the other way. So we have to reject Chequers. We have to sustain the fact that leave means leave, and if that means no deal, it is self-evidently better than a bad deal. That doesn't need arguing. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your support.
Ladies and gentlemen, is actually a very recent addition to the House of Commons. She was elected in 2015 and being very talented, she was very quickly promoted to a government position. But she is a conviction politician and she was prepared to put cause before her career. When she saw the way that the negotiations were going and how badly they were being handled, she very quickly resigned so that she could speak out. That's an incredibly brave thing to do at the early part of your political career, and she did it. She wasn't finished there, though. She then courageously called for the Prime Minister to be replaced. But she's also multi-talented, because she's in her other life, she's a professional soprano singer. So you never know, we may get a Brexit song this afternoon. Anyway, let's just look at a clip of her in action before we welcome her to the stage.
One former ministerial aide is calling on Theresa May to go, with a warning of trouble ahead.
Andrea Jenkyns!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Prime Minister inform the House at what point it was decided that Brexit means remain? You don't believe in democracy? We had a referendum. You wouldn't be saying that if you'd have won the vote. Go Brexit! Go Brexit!
Please welcome to the stage, Andrea Jenkyns, MP.
Thank you. Thank you for continuing to believe in Britain these long 2 years. It's you who gives us politicians the strength to fight on, to fight on, to fight on. When I walk around my constituency high streets, and when I read my emails, and when I see faces in the audience today, I see people that want change. People who want the best for our country, and I see people from every background, every religion, every political party, and every faith, frustrated and let down at where we find ourselves in this Brexit process. That's why events like this, which we've got to thank Richard and John for what they've done, it's events like this that mean so much. And it's so important to bring people together from across the political spectrum, people who are standing up for Brexit, and people who are standing up for our country, and people who are standing up to get the Brexit that we voted for. The current negotiations, the Brexit is being betrayed by the Chequers proposal. I'm sure many of the people in the room today agree with this. Boris Johnson likened the Chequers proposal in his witty manner as in going into battle with a white flag fluttering over our leading tank. But I say the government's denied us a tank at all. Instead, they are taking us into battle in a Robin-reliant and armed only with concessions. Britain can do better, Britain will do better, and Britain deserves better. As we all know, the British people voted to leave the EU in one of our biggest democratic decisions ever taken. Now, the Remainers all say that the vote was close, but I think a majority of 1.3 million people is not necessarily close. It's us British people. The British people know the best people to govern this centuries-old island of ours are themselves. We chose to leave the EU because we know how great our country can be. We can be this global, outward-looking, free-trading nation that supports businesses, jobs and prosperity for people here at home. Now, nothing worth doing is ever easy, as I'm sure everybody on the panel agrees these last few years. But our country is big enough, it's strong enough to stand on our own 2 feet, and we are best placed to reach out in the world, to the far corners of the earth, across borders, cultures and languages and faiths, and hear back the call of friendship. From the Commonwealth countries, historic allies and trading partners from Americas, from Africa, from Australasia, from Asia, and yes, from Europe. From the people of Europe in their diverse, vibrant, sovereign countries, friends, allies and trading partners, we are not alone. When we voted to take back control of our money, our borders, our laws, our fishing policy, our agricultural policy, our trade policy, our tax policy, and so much more, it was not to turn our back on our friends across the world. It was to turn our back on over-regulation, on bureaucracy and undemocratic institutions. By the way, Peter, I've spotted somebody with one of your Go t-shirts on there. Now, for millions, this was the first time that they'd voted. The referendum represented the first time that people felt that they could really change Britain for the better and that their voice really mattered. And to ignore their vote would be a disaster for democracy. The British people, if they were to be betrayed, I fear there'd be catastrophic consequences. Now, recall the... Yes, yeah, and I'm sure I'd be leading it, along with a few friends, of course. Yeah. Now, I recall one man on referendum day in my constituency in Morley. Now, he was about my age, 40, 45, and he approached me and he said that he wanted to vote for Brexit, he wanted to vote for change, but he'd never voted before. Now, this man wanted to take his country back. He had not voted despite being eligible to vote for decades, and this man represents millions across our country who voted for the first time. They felt that they had a voice, they felt they had the power to change Britain for the better. If the government lets that man down, why would he ever vote again, and why would the British people bother? We would end up with weaker, not renewed institutions. Now, we voted back to take control from Brussels, and since that bold step forward towards a brighter future for Britain, remain supporting politicians who have worked tirelessly to take back control from us, the people, and to wrestle the decision from our hands and mutate the referendum result from Brexit to Brexit in name only. These Remainers are endlessly talking our country down, but they are underestimating our great country and they are underestimating our great people. Our people who gave a seismic vote of confidence in ourselves. Our people who know that there are no limits what free people can achieve when we are in control of our own destiny. Our people who know that Britain's golden years are in the future. And we know that Britain will thrive. It's time to chuck checkers and stand up for the Brexit that people voted for. Put simply, the EU is trying to bully us. How dare we leave their gang? How dare we threaten their project? How dare we withdraw our funding from their lavish lifestyle in Brussels? While the people of Europe suffer. The Commission fears power seeping from its grasp, and they know that if Britain succeeds, which we will, if we are free to grasp those opportunities, they know that others will break free from their project and their project will fail. And bring it on, I say. Now, we are a proud nation and we have a proud history, what I'm certainly proud of. Now, the people of Europe are being bound by fear, and it falls to us, not only here today, but us as a country and our people, who, as it has so many times in history, to show Europe that there is another way. For the future of our country, and I expect the future of Europe, it is unthinkable that we would not rise to meet this challenge, especially one that offers so many opportunities to those willing to seize them. We must be determined to prove them wrong. We must be fearless, we must be courageous, we must stand tall with dignity and pride, and we will lead the way.
We've always been a world leader.
Sorry?
We've always been a world leader.
Oh, absolutely. I think we'll look. What's your name, sir? What's your name, sir?
Mark.
Mark. Very well said, Mark. Yeah. I might quote you next time I make a speech. Now, to finish off, I'm going to quote Winston Churchill. Now we are the masters of our fate. The task which has been set us is not above our strength. Its pangs and toils are not beyond our endurance. Friends, we must ensure Brexit is delivered in full. Together, we are on a mission to fulfil Britain's destiny and to chart our own course in the world. Britain wills it, Britain wants it, and Britain will get it. Thank you.
Brilliant, Andrea. Well done, thank you. A rising star in our House of Commons, ladies and gentlemen, for sure. The next speaker needs little introduction, but it is worth just reminding ourselves of what he has achieved. He has battled for this cause for over 25 years. Slowly, but surely, he has changed the course of British political history. He will without question go down as one of the most influential political figures since the Second World War. And he has done this. He's done this in the face of vilification, abuse, threats to his family. What he's put up with just doesn't, it's unbelievable. His courage also manifested when he was unfortunately in a very serious plane crash on one election day. It would have killed many people. Bless him, he dragged himself out, wiped away the odd bit of blood, dusted himself down, and promptly lit a cigarette. He is a true patriot. He's possibly the original Brexiteer. Before we welcome him to the stage, let's just see him in action recently.
It sounds as if you smell betrayal in the air.
The compromise that she put forward at Chequers last week, the PM's country home, frankly was a betrayal. I'm going to try and get the people to let their members of Parliament know they will not accept being betrayed. And I tell you what, if I have to do this again, next time, no more Mr. Nice Guy. We had a referendum. We voted for something. Our politicians should deliver this.
We have made our minds up in the greatest democratic exercise in the history of this country.
I trust the voice of the people more than the politicians.
Please welcome to the stage Nigel Farage.
Do you know, I've given the best part of my adult life fighting, campaigning, battling for one thing, that we, the British people, should be masters of our own destiny, running our own lives, in control of our own country. And that referendum on June the 23rd, when we won that vote, was the happiest day of my life. And it was already very straightforward, wasn't it? We were told that for once this was an issue that Parliament allowed us to make a decision on. And we were told by the party leaders that whatever we decided, they would abide by it. Indeed, do you remember Mr. Cameron? Well, it's surprising because most of the country have forgotten about him, but anyway.
Mr Cameron spent £9 million of taxpayers' money putting that outrageous leaflet through every door in Milan. How I enjoyed posting mine back through the letterbox of number 10, I have to tell you, with some annotations, but not ones I'm going to share with you on a public platform. But that leaflet, again, couldn't have been clearer. This is your decision, and we will abide by the result. What we are campaigning on here today, and the reason that I've signed up with Leave Means Leave, which is a party, non-party organisation, it doesn't matter where you come from, this issue of whether we get Brexit delivered is bigger than party politics. It's the most important political issue of our lifetimes. So we were told it was our say, and we had a huge debate. Do you remember what we were told by the Governor of the Bank of England, by the... Oh, I've got better than that for you, don't worry. The ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, Nick Clegg, Tony Blair. We were all told hundreds of thousands of jobs would be lost, disaster, plague and pestilence would sweep our country. They even sent President Obama over, didn't they? To tell us we'd be at the back of the queue, knowing as we do, Americans would only ever use the word line, but doing the bidding of that Prime Minister, soon to be forgotten, of the day. Despite everything, despite the massive imbalance, we, by a very clear margin, voted to leave the European Union, and frankly, that should have been that. That should have been that, but now we're told we didn't understand what we were voting for. You are all thick and pig ignorant. They even have the effrontery to tell us that, that people were lied to, despite the fact that the greatest lie of all was told back in the 1970s, when my parents' generation were told they were joining nothing more than a common market, which was about friendship and free trade. Even if Boris's figures on the side of a bus were a bit on the high side, it is nothing to the half a century of lies we've been told by the establishment in this country. And we know what we voted for. We know exactly what we voted for. And we know it because the leading campaigners on both sides of the argument made it clear that a vote to leave the European Union was a vote to leave the European Union. It couldn't have been simpler. We were told that a vote to leave was a vote to leave the single market. We knew it. We understood it. And we absolutely knew that a vote to leave was a vote to take back control of our borders. We knew it. And we argued. We argued through the campaign, as Peter pointed out earlier, we argued through the campaign for an Australian-style point system on immigration so that we did not discriminate in favour of EU citizens. We picked people from across the world who would come to live to our country, who had skills, talent, trades to bring and would integrate in our society. We knew what we voted for. We knew we were voting to take back of that which had been given away. We knew we were voting to take back control of our fishing waters. We knew, we understood all of these things. And if it wasn't bad enough for us to vote once for all of these things, we then, the following year, as Graham mentioned, had a referendum, a general election, sorry. And in that general election, we were told by the leaders of the two main parties that vote for us in this election and we will take you out of the European Union, we will take you out of the single market. We don't need, as Leave means leave, to rehearse the arguments. We don't need to rerun the referendum. All of that has been done. No, what this is about is actually something far more fundamental, something even more important than the issues themselves. This is now about a matter of trust, a matter of trust between us, the people, and our political class who are doing their best to dilute, to delay, to stop. They are trying to betray Brexit, and we are here today to tell them we won't let you get away with doing that. In fact, I worry, Andrew gave the example of a constituent, but I genuinely worry if we're forced to do this all over again, what that will actually do in terms of our trust, our faith and our belief in our entire democratic system. That system of self-government that those generations that went before us sacrificed so much to make sure was their lasting legacy to us. A second referendum would be an abomination in terms of all of those things. But it would appear our politicians aren't listening. But maybe now we have a fresh opportunity. Given the quite extraordinary data breach that occurred around the Conservative app for their conference yesterday, you no longer need to write to the Prime Minister or the Chancellor of the Exchequer. You can just ring them up directly because you've got all their details. So I suggest you take the opportunity. But more seriously, folks, I never thought I'd be back on a stage campaigning for Brexit. I thought we'd done it, but it's clear that we haven't. And it's clear that we have a Prime Minister who is now stuck on a course, her Chequers deal, which is only supported by 10% of the country, and that's on a good day and with a following wind. It is clear she wishes to keep us wrapped up in European rules. But it is equally clear that whilst the media obsesses on the internal civil war that is going on within the Conservative Party, and as an outsider it's a very entertaining spectacle, but something is being lost in all of this. And it is that the Brexit vote wasn't just about Conservative voters. The Brexit vote, well, at least 2.5 million people voted who had not turned out the previous year in the general election. But what is being lost in all of this is there are 5 million people who voted Brexit in 2016, who then voted for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. We must stop thinking and framing this Brexit betrayal as if it's just about Theresa May. The truth of it is, it's happening very deep, with some honourable exceptions, but it's happening very deep within the Labour Party. It really is. And we must speak to those people. One thing I learnt through years of building up UKIP, and in the end, being able to force the establishment into offering us a referendum as a means, as they called it, of shooting the UKIP fox. They offered us a referendum. They did it because they were fearful that we would cost them votes. And I would contend that today the one thing that scares members of Parliament more than anything is the prospect of them losing votes. What we are doing here in this cross-party platform of Leave Means Leave is we are necessarily reawakening, restarting the Leave campaign. We don't want you just to come to our rallies. We don't want you just to agree with us online. We don't want you just to tell your friends and neighbours that you've been here, important though that is. We want you to go and talk to your Member of Parliament. Now you will find on your chairs, the names, addresses and emails of all the Members of Parliament in this area. And I want you not just to write them a polite letter, I want you to go and knock on their door. I want you to queue outside their constituency surgeries. I want them to understand that they cannot, in the cosy tea rooms of Westminster, just bypass you and be allowed to get away with it. I want you to make our political class, who are on the verge of betraying Brexit, to feel the heat. Will you help us do that? Good. Good. Well, and remember, do so in a way that is polite. Do so in a way that is decent and correct. Do so in a way that does not allow any criticism of what you've done. But please, make sure you are direct and firm. You will never vote for them again unless they deliver the Brexit that you voted for. That's what we need to do. I can't predict what will happen over the course of the next few months. I can't predict whether Theresa May will change course on her disastrous Chequers plan. I can't predict what kind of deal in the end that lovely Monsieur Barnier and the charming Donald Tusk, aren't they arrogant, rude so-and-sos over there? You know, whether you like Mrs May or not, no unelected bureaucrat should treat a British Prime Minister in the way she was treated at Salzburg. I can't predict whether they will try to suspend Article 50. I can't predict whether they'll be able to force a second referendum upon us. In my heart, I feel that we are going to leave on March the 29th next year, but on current course, on a deal that does not satisfy the democratic will of this people. I can't predict any of it. But the whole point, folks, of building an army is not that you want to fight a war, it's that you want to prevent a war. And the stronger we can make this cross-party platform of Leave means leave, the more of you that sign up to us, the more of you that help us, the more of you that put pressure on your Members of Parliament, the more chance we've winning by whatever means is available to us. What we are doing here with Leave means leave is we are remobilising the people's army of this country that gave us victory in Brexit and will never rest until we become an independent, self-governing, proud, united kingdom. Thank you.
You might have to rise again, Nigel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we can safely say, ladies and gentlemen, he hasn't lost his touch, has he? I think he's just warming up again. We didn't want to have to be back, but back we are. And for our final speaker this afternoon, this is someone from the Labour Party. He's a councillor in Ashford in Kent. He's director of Labour Leave. He's another brave, conviction Brexiteer in the Labour Party who has to put up with a lot. He's a fantastic speaker. Let's just look at some of his clips before we welcome him to the stage.
I think a lot of voters, particularly Labour Leave voters, of which there are about 4 million in the country, will be very concerned.
Around this country now, fishing fleets are gone, fishing stocks are destroyed because of the common fisheries policy. A policy that sees our fish bought by European fishermen and sold back to us because we can't control our own waters. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Kicking the poorest in the world in the teeth because they can't access European markets. That is an internationalist. And as a Labour person, I want to be, because I want to see the poorest in the world raised out of poverty, I want us out so our aid means something.
Please welcome to the stage, Brendan Chilton.
Good afternoon, comrades. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon in Birmingham, which voted to leave in the referendum. Well done, Birmingham. And can I begin by thanking the organisers of this fantastic rally and thank all of you for your continuing commitment to our democracy, to Brexit, and for the cause which we all believe in, the freedom and independence of our nation. Thank you, everyone, for all you've done. But friends, our democracy is in peril. A dangerous and elite cartel, that's what they are, a cartel of big business, big finance and big politics are openly and clearly saying to all of us, your vote doesn't count. We're not going to listen to you. Damn them. Let's remove them from power and make sure Brexit means Brexit. The second referendum campaign, the people's vote, it's not a people's vote, it's the second referendum campaign. And that's what we should call it, a second referendum campaign. Losers vote. The losers vote. That's what they are. As has been said, we have already had a referendum that took us in. We've already had a referendum that took us out. We've had a general election that confirmed the decision. How many more votes do they want before they get it into their heads? We're leaving the European Union. And Project Fear is back alive and well. Aeroplanes won't fly. There won't be any medicine. There's going to be no food. There'll be no trade. The economy will collapse. They told us those lies. We were lied to in the referendum by the Remainers. They lied through their teeth and the people rejected it. Now, as has been said, all parties committed to accepting the outcome of the referendum, except the Lib Dems, but who are they? They're even now outsourcing their leaders. But I say the most worrying betrayal of all is the one that appears to be building at the moment in the party I love, the Labour Party. Again, infiltrated by the second referendum campaign. We told the people we would accept the outcome of the referendum. 70% of our constituencies voted to leave,
and up to 5 million Labour voters supported Leave. We will all be looking now at those policies coming out of Sir Keir Starmer's mouth and saying, is this really the policy we can support? Now, the Labour Eurosceptic tradition is a great one. It was Clement Attlee, the first Labour Prime Minister, that kept us out of the coal and steel community because the Durham miners wouldn't wear it. What a great Prime Minister he was, and what a great decision he made. It was Hugh Gaitskell who said that our entry into the common market would mean the end of 1,000 years of history. And wasn't he right? But we have reborn that history again. And in 1983, it was the first political party, the Labour Party, that committed to taking us out of the European Union. Something has gone wrong since. And of course, the first referendum we had was won by that great Labour stalwart, Tony Benn, who said of the European Union that when he went to Brussels, he felt as though he were a slave in chains going to Rome. And that is precisely how the oppressed peoples of Greece, of Spain, of Italy, and of Portugal feel. And when we're told that if we leave the European Union, our rights will be threatened, environmental protections will go, social protections will go, they were won by the British Labour and Trade Union movement before we even went in to the common market. And if we do not have the confidence, the ability and the strength to defend those rights, what is the point in the Labour and Trade Union movement? We should have confidence in ourselves and not be dependent on a bunch of unelected bureaucrats that brought us TTIP that would have destroyed our National Health Service. No to TTIP and no to Brussels. The young people of this country are being sold one hell of a myth and a lie. They're being told that their futures are now lying in tatters. They won't be able to study, they won't be able to travel. It's all a myth. The biggest thing we can do when we leave this hall today is speak to our young people, speak to our children, grandchildren, cousins, brothers and sisters, and tell them the truth. Of course you'll be able to travel. Of course you'll be able to go abroad. Of course you'll be able to speak other languages. Europe is not the be-all and end-all. We're a global nation with a global future. Let's be the optimists for our young people. Because today, the emerging markets are not in the European Union. They're in the southeast of Asia, in Latin America, and yes, in Africa. And when we leave the European Union, our immigration policy will once again be a fair and international one that doesn't discriminate against our kith and kin in the Commonwealth and places white, rich, privileged Europe above all others. As an internationalist, I cannot support such a disgusting and outrageous policy. Now some on this stage have fought longer than I for our independence from the European Union, but the battle is far from over. We are now facing for the first time an open revolt against democracy in this country by the establishment. We're no longer leavers and remainers. We are Democrats and anti-democrats. And the battle that lies ahead is one between us, the internationalists, against the Euro-nationalists. It's us, the Democrats, against the anti-democrats. It's us that have a belief and a vision of this country as an independent and free nation against those who want us hanging on the coattails of Brussels. Good always prevails, and we will win. So when we go out from this hall today, let us go with confidence. We're standing in solidarity with those the European Union is bullying and oppressing in southern Europe. We're standing in solidarity with those countries that have faced EU austerity, because that's what it is. We're standing up for democratic struggles all over the world. And we should go out with hope and confidence in our country and a conviction in our belief that independence is better than subservience. We will do well, and our best days lie ahead. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'm going to ask you to do something for me in a moment. But first of all, can we thank the panel of speakers? What an amazing panel of speakers. So I have to say that my favourite scare story was the one that came out of the government's papers on a no-deal Brexit. It was that we would have to rely on the Americans in future to tell us if there's going to be an asteroid strike on Earth. Oh! Anyway, what I want you to do, and I want you to do this not just to send a message down the road to the ICC, I want them to hear this message, but also because I know that this is being live streamed. And at the Bolton rally last week, we had 127,000 people watch it live at home. We had nearly 500,000 view the event afterwards. So I want a really loud response. And what I want you to do is pick up your cards and stand up.
John, can we have cards?
The panel are feeling left out because they want cards. We're just waiting for cards. So hold up your cards and give us the chant. What do we want? Brexit! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Brexit! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Brexit! When do we want it? Now! Give yourselves a cheer! And thank you for coming. Safe journeys home, everybody.